Okay.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Ariel Green, and I'm the Caregiver Support and Education Specialist for Care Partners. And this is our second installment of our legal and financial series. Today, we will be talking about aging in place. Last week, we talked about estate planning, and we have Angela Odinsky and Rose on with AARP, and she is going to be giving a brief overview of their services. They are our wonderful sponsors, and we're so happy that they are here with us today. But before we jump into that, I do want to let you know about Care Partners. So if you are not familiar with our services, we are a local nonprofit in Houston, Texas, and we serve older adults, including those with dementia, and their family caregivers. We do that a number of ways. One of it is through what you are receiving right now, which is caregiver education. The other few are our consultation programs. So if you're a caregiver and you need one-on-one support, you can reach out to us. We also provide 2 activity programs for individuals that have dementia. One is through our Gathering Place, the other one is through our Dementia Day Center. So we will be sending out information after the presentation. However, I will put my information in the chat. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Happy to help you. And so I'm going to turn it over to our partners over at AARP, and she is going to give us an overview and share a lot of information about what they do, because they do a lot, and we are really happy that they are here to provide additional support to you. And then after that, we'll hear from our speaker. So turn it over to you, Rose.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so happy to be back with you this week, Ariel and Angela. And if you were not with us last week, you missed a good session. My pen was busy going, even though I knew that the PowerPoint was coming. It was just so much information, so much good information. It was not an overabundance. It was just good information that I could not wait to get off the call so I can share. But my name is Rosenate Childress, and I am a volunteer with AARP. And I know many of you have heard of AARP, probably as a place to get discounts and insurance, but we're more than that. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization that's dedicated to providing information and resources that are important to people over 50 and their families. Now, our social mission is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. And through educational offerings and partnerships, such as the one we have with Care Partners, we give caregiving workshops, cooking classes, legal workshops, and a host of other engagements. We have fun with the purpose, such as our meetings. We have a hurricane preparedness at the Houston Botanical Gardens here. So if you go to the website, you'll see that. So it's a time to socialize. And if you're a caregiver, this is a perfect opportunity to go out, get some information about hurricane preparedness. And also, you're getting out and you're meeting other folks. And so that's one of the examples of some of the things that we do. Now, our founder is Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, and she was an educator and believed that people could choose how they live as they age. Now, AARP offers membership benefits ranging from discounts, healthcare options, insurance products, travel-related services, education, and learning resources. But we're also advocates for those 50 plus and issues that pertain to us. And this year, our 2023 legislative priorities are here, just a couple: reforming nursing homes, how to assist people with utilities, full practice authority for advanced practice nurses. And if you've been looking at the news, you know that in some of the smaller cities or the outlying cities, there are no medical facilities. And so this would be something that would be really helpful. Access to medically tailored meals, because sometimes we're on special diets. And so that's one of those things that's way up there. Elder financial exploitation, and that comes in many different forms. Improvements to estate and advanced care planning, and that's where Angela comes in. And we are asking for the ability to have remote ink notarization, to have modifications on the medical power of attorney. And things that we will continue to monitor is the effort to weaken the Office of Long-Term Care Ombudsman. We need to strengthen that because our numbers are getting larger. And I see Angela shaking her head. Yeah. So that's something that we really need. Real estate listing predatory contracts, payday lending. So these are just some of the things that AARP is working on in the state legislature, and also watching, because these are things that directly affect us. And these are things that are very important to us. But now, something that will also assist us in getting out and assist our partners is volunteers. We need volunteers. We need your friendly faces. So now, if you're interested in learning more about us, AARP, the organization, or to volunteer, then visit us at www.aarp.org/nearyou. And I will be putting other contact information in the chat, where you can locate us, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, all of the platforms in English and in Spanish. So I'm going to turn it on over to Angela, where we can get all of this great information. She's going to continue to feed us with the information that we need. And so I'm turning it over to you and Ariel. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. The AARP is such a great organization for just information, education, advocacy. I highly recommend getting involved. And I think that, one of those priorities about strengthening the ombudsman is so important, because your local long-term care ombudsman is they're your partner and they're your advocate when you are in nursing home situations, when you're in assisted living situations, and we need to manage the care. We need to make sure that our loved one is getting the kind of care that we need, and we don't feel that the facility is necessarily, pulling their weight, holding their end of the bargain. Then we get the ombudsman involved, and they really can help families understand what their rights are, understand what needs to happen and where they need to be. I'm a huge advocate for the ombudsman program. So my name is Angela Odinsky, and I'm a certified elder law attorney in Bel Air, Houston, Texas. And Ariel, did you have something to say before I started?
Yes, I was going to remind everyone, thank you, Angela, about the presentation. So I did put it in the chat. The chat, I believe, is disabled. This is new. We just switched over to the webinar feature, but you can communicate with us in the Q&A, and I will respond either individually or I will respond collectively if it's a collective question. But in terms of accessing the slides, we did send out a reminder email before the presentation. So that would also have the slides in it. So you can click out of here, minimize it, and go to your email, and you can find the slides there. Please check your spam if you didn't get the email. And then I also put it in the chat, and I will continuously put it in the chat because some people are joining. And so you can find it there. If you cannot access it, I promise I will be sending it after the presentation. You can email me and I will get it to you, I promise. But those are the two places that you can get it today, in the chat and then also in your email. So I'm going to turn it back over to Angela. But I did want to clarify because I have been getting a lot of questions. So
thank you. Yeah, it's always fun dealing with new technology. You just never know what's going to happen next. I will say that, we have a presentation. There will be question and answers at the end. And so if you add questions to the Q&A part, I will go through and read those at the end. Please keep them of general knowledge. I can't give you any kind of legal advice or legal direction for your specific circumstances. I have very strict ethical rules that I have to follow. But if your questions tend to be, something of general interest or general questions, I am happy to address those as much as I can. I will do what I can to address the questions that we had. Somebody had a question about AARP and their MetLife long-term care insurance policy and whether MetLife is going to continue doing long-term care insurance. That is not a question that I can answer. That would be something that you would have to go through MetLife and AARP to find the answer to that specific kind of question. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for the so that everyone can see my slides. That's the biggest question I have right now.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. All right. So what is your aging in place plan? So today we're talking about this very specific concept of aging in place, right? AARP, one of the things that Rose was talking about was this idea that you get to choose how you want to age. And you can and you should, but you have to plan for it. It's not something that just happens automatically, just simply by the fact that you continue living. You get to automatically continue making decisions for yourself on how you want to age, right? That doesn't happen for most people. Most people end up in situations where they're relying on other people to either make decisions for them or to help them follow through with decisions. And so it's really crucial to have an aging in place plan. Just so that you have more control over your destiny. So what is the goal? I've been having a lot of conversations this week about the concept of problem solving and issue spotting. And what I've realized is that a lot of people know intuitively there's a problem. And they think they know what the problem is, and they move forward to this problem solving. They move forward to solving the problem because they know that there's a problem. But the solutions they come up with don't necessarily solve the problem they have. They might solve a different problem, but they don't solve the problem they have, because you don't know what your problem is unless you know what your goals are, right? A problem is nothing more than a barrier to reaching your goals. And so if you don't know what those goals are, then you don't know what your problem really is, and you can't solve for it. It's not intuitive until you sit down and really think about it, but you've got to know where you want to end up before you know how to get there. And so generally speaking, when we're talking about long-term care, our goal is going to be always to age with dignity, to have access to the best possible care, and to take control, to make sure that we maintain some control over who is going to be managing our finances, if you're unable to, and under what circumstances they're going to be able to do that. So keeping track of who we're putting in charge, what they're able to do, what they're allowed to do, what they should be doing, and making sure that they know what you want for yourself as you age that will allow you to live your life and have the end of your life in the most dignity possible. All right, so when we talk about long-term care, there's a lot of specific terminology that we have to be dealing with. And so one of the things that as far as defining long-term care, we're talking about this stage of being where you need help with things called activities of daily living. And this is your day-to-day things: getting up, out of bed, bathing, dressing, eating, right? Toileting, doing what you need to do to have a productive day. Those are your activities of daily living. And if you have one of those long-term care insurance policies, there's probably some kind of provision in there that says that the policy can come into play when you have deficiency in a certain number of activities of daily living. So this is what we're talking about when we say that. There are also instrumental activities of daily living, and these are the ones that are a little bit more higher functioning. Like you can still, if you're still able to get up, get dressed, feed yourself, like do your regular daily chores, that's fantastic. And you can live independently that way to a certain level. But then there's also still the housework, the shopping, caring for your pets, making sure that you have your medications in order, right? Medication management, prepping meals, managing money, paying bills, doing things like that. It's a different level of activities of daily living that we all engage in. And it's the next level, I guess, of independence, right? And so sometimes we have to find people to help with these things so that we can maintain our independence when we're able to do the regular bathing, dressing, eating, etc. So this is what we're referring to when we're talking about long-term care. There are very specific definitions of these, of what we mean. So who's going to need care, right? Most of us. That's the short answer. The Department of Health and Human Services estimates 70% of all people over 65 are going to need some form of long-term care. They're going to need some help at some point in time, right? And that, I think that bears out, like just in my own practice, reviewing everything, talking to people. People over 70 have a greater increased need for long-term care. Let's face it, we are living longer with more chronic illnesses that leave us with greater disabilities. And so when we end up, we are going and we're just fine and we're aging and we've made our plans and we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing, and then some health event occurs. Something happens within our health, and then everything just kind of shifts. And the independence that we did have yesterday, we no longer have, right? And so, but whatever it is that shifted isn't going to kill us. We're going to be there living with that now for a while. And so there is a very real possibility that significant number of people on this call at some point in time, whether you're a caregiver yourself, you're a person who is just interested in planning for the future, you work in a medical or sort of senior services area, no matter where you're at, most likely you are going to fall into the area of people who are going to need help of some kind. And so it's really important to, again, plan for that, plan for what that's going to look like. In 21, there was about 400,000 Texans with Alzheimer's. That's expected to increase 40% over the next 10 years. They're making strides, right? They're making strides in lifestyle changes, dietary changes that we can make that might help reduce Alzheimer's, medications that might help reduce the effects of Alzheimer's, et cetera. But the fact is that this is something that we are going to be living with, and we are going to be trying to figure out how to manage for a long time. So when you're thinking about what your goals are and what your long-term care needs are, it's important to think about like what your options are going to be. And again, with that, not knowing where the goal is, so you don't know what problem you're solving for, you kind of have to understand the different areas of where you might have options available, right? So you need to know, you need to have an understanding or an idea of what your care needs might be. And now I know it's difficult to assume the future, but if you just keep going like you are and there's no catastrophic health event, at some point in time, there will be a time when, you know, maybe it's not as easy to pick up that pot in the kitchen anymore, right? It's not as easy to make sure those dishes get done. So it's important to think, even if there's not a catastrophic health event, there's, you know, what kind of need might arise in the future? What happened to your own family, right? What kind of needs arrived for your own parents? What are your finances? Like I tell everyone, elder law is a math problem. Everything about it is a math question. What do you have coming in your income? What are your assets? What are your expenses going out? How long is everything going to last you, right? Knowing what your finances are is absolutely crucial. I have people who come into my office and they can tell me to the penny everything they have. I have other people coming into my office panic that they're just not going to be able to afford their long-term care or what's going to happen. And then I go through their stuff and I realize no, they're okay. They've done really well for themselves financially. They just didn't realize it. They had their stuff spread out over so many different places. They just didn't know what they had. And so really having a grasp of your finances, and if you're a caregiver for somebody, having a grasp of the finances for the person that you're caring for is very important. And then what are your wishes? What do you want your aging to look like? A lot of people want to stay in the home that they've been in for 50 years. Okay, well, what does that look like? Do you have a community of people who come over all the time? Is there family and friends who are constantly there, who are able to kind of check up and be there for you and maintain sort of social and quality of life? Or is it one of those, do you have a loved one who sits in their home in the dark, like waiting for people to come and sit with them or visit them, right? Aging in place doesn't mean aging in the house that you have had for 50 years. Aging in place basically means choosing how you want to age and where you want to age. So knowing what your wishes are and knowing what you want for your future. Do you like being social? Do you like being around a lot of people? Maybe staying in your house isn't the right option. Maybe being in a senior community is a better solution for you, just because your quality of life could be better doing that. And you know, it's worth kind of knowing yourself and knowing what you want. So you have to know where you want to get to, so we can figure out how to get there. So there's all kinds of long-term care options, right? There's unpaid caregivers, family, friends, etc. We can only rely on them for so long, to be honest, because unpaid caregivers have increased risk of adverse health events by being caregivers. Anything that is associated with stress, heart attack, stroke, just chronic illness. All of those things are increased when somebody is an unpaid caregiver and they are relied upon 100% to care for our loved ones. Then there are paid caregivers, home health care, right? Over 55 communities, independent living communities. So an over 55 community is kind of like living on a cruise ship, right? It's a turnkey living where there's, you know, you have your hair salon and nail salon right there or nearby. There are people around, there are constantly social things, everyone within the same age group, etc. Independent living, again, it's apartment style living. Some of your meals might be paid for, some of, or included, some of them not. Assisted living is still apartment style living, though you don't have your own sort of stove and kitchen anymore. It's a little bit higher level of care. There are personal care homes, which are home community settings for people who need a little bit more skilled care, but don't necessarily want to be in a skilled nursing facility or a nursing home. Memory care facilities and skilled nursing facilities. So the range of long-term care options is enormous. I know that a lot of people have it in their heads, they're either in their home or they're in the old folks' home, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. There are so many options out there. And a lot of these communities try very, very hard to make sure that the living situations provide a higher quality of life or provide a good quality of life for the people there. Now, you know, some people don't want to be social. They don't want to make new friends. It's too late. They're done. They have their friends. They know what they want to do. They're set in their ways. That's okay. Just know what your plan is. And if your plan is to rely wholly on your family as unpaid caregivers, I would ask you to rethink that plan. Like, see if we can come up with another way, because that is really difficult on those unpaid caregivers. So let's talk about how much care costs, right? So we have the family caregiver, it's unpaid, but it's not free, right? Just because you're not having to pay out of pocket cash, it doesn't make it free. There is a cost that is associated with being an unpaid caregiver, including those health costs, taking time off work, allowing the caregiver to be able to, you know, make money so that they can put towards their retirement, right? There's all kinds of costs that come with unpaid family caregiving. Home health aides in Houston are about $24 an hour. These numbers are about from 2021. I don't have a newer study. So of course, inflation is gonna affect some of these numbers. Assisted living average is about $50,000 a year. Skilled nursing average is about $63,000 a year for semi-private room and $93,000 a year for a private room. Now, this is across Texas, as it's across sort of the Houston area, understanding that some facilities are, $350, $375 a day. And some facilities can be as low as like $200 a day, right? So they're all going to be kind of different. And they're going to offer different levels of care, different levels of amenities, as it were. So payment options, right? Because that's always the question. How are we going to pay for this? Well, we have a few options, right? You can pay with your own savings. If you have a long-term care insurance policy, rely on that, depending on what it is and what kind of things it might cover. If you don't have a long-term care insurance policy, and you are young enough to still be able to get one, it's worth talking to somebody about one. They have their benefits, absolutely. You can rely on Medicaid or VA benefits if you are eligible for either of those. Next week's talk is all about Medicaid, right? So it's all about figuring out, like talking specifically about qualifications and things for Medicaid benefits, what Medicaid covers, and like what that process looks like. You putting together a legal plan, right, to protect your home and your savings and put other people in charge of doing specific things so that we can kind of manage your assets most appropriately, or a combination of all above. And let's face it, most people do end up with a combination of all above. So resources to consider. This is really important. If you have a need, if your family member, if you're a loved one, if the person that you are caring for, if you are a caretaker, if you have a need that seems weird and it's only specific to like the senior services industry, there is somebody out there that does it. There are so many incredible people in Houston with small businesses that are specifically geared towards helping seniors in some niche way. And I run into these businesses all the time, and I'm always so shocked by what we can accomplish. I think my favorite one that I learned about, and I was like, it never even occurred to me that that would be a thing, is this company that comes in and they will put a slip covering on your bathroom floor so that you can reduce the possibility of falls or slipping on your bathroom floor. It's a very simple solution to a very, very expensive problem. But one that it never occurred to me that there would be something out there that would be so obvious, right? So if you have an issue with something, other seniors have an issue with something with the same things, and most likely somebody has started a business to help with that. And so there are specialists in every area. So there are specialists who assist in locating residential living facilities, right? So they know the independent living facilities, the memory care facilities, assisted living, personal care homes. They can let you know the good, the bad, the ugly about all of them, show you places that are within your budget. If you tell them what you're looking for, if you tell them what your budget is, they can help you find those. And they are paid for by the facilities that they have contracts with, not by you. And so it's worth contacting a senior service specialist or senior service locator if you or your loved one is like, we don't even know where to go. We don't know what to do. It's so overwhelming. There are 150 bazillion facilities in Houston. Where do we start? Start by talking to somebody who knows the landscape, who understands what it is what questions to ask, and who can guide you on what questions to ask. There are companies who can assist with cleaning out and downsizing. I think one of the biggest deterrents to actually moving into a smaller place or into a place that can be more social, or that might be in someone's best interest, is the idea that, what am I going to do with all my stuff? I have so much. I've built up 75 years of stuff in my house. Now what? Well, there are people who can come in and help you with that, right? They can nail down what it is in your surroundings that make your home a home. We keep that stuff, we move it, and then they can help you get rid of the rest of the stuff so that you don't have to worry about it. There's a lot of overwhelm that is associated with like long-term care planning and knowing what the next step is. And taking that, like having a plan, knowing what industries exist, and taking the overwhelm out of it really helps the process move along. Using your home to ease the financial burden. There's a couple of different ways you can do that, right? So if you know, selling your home and using those proceeds to supplement your income to pay for a facility, it's a very common thing to do. If you want to keep your house and stay living in your house, there are ways to tap into the equity, like reverse mortgages and different kind of loans. I don't speak to those directly. They are not good in every circumstance, but they have their place, and talking to professionals about them is not, you know, that's always an option as long as you are really careful and know the ins and outs. Taking a fall prevention course, knowing how to be safer in your own home. You can go from 100% independence to 0% independence in one fall. Done. That's it. And so being aware of fall prevention, knowing fall hazards in your own house and removing those, that can assist in allowing you to stay in your own space. If you have a spouse, if you and your spouse are thinking about what it's going to look like what your future is going to look like, there is some pre-planning that we can do within your wills to allow us to protect half of an estate, while still potentially allowing a surviving spouse to qualify for Medicaid later on. And then there's the STAR Plus waiver interest list. And if y'all don't get anything else out of this entire talk, know the STAR Plus waiver interest list. The STAR Plus waiver interest list is a Medicaid program. Okay. It is a Medicaid program. It's the only program that allows for sort of the skilled care to come to your home. So it's the only thing that allows for home health care at a skilled level that Medicaid will pay for. You have to meet the same criteria as Medicaid for skilled nursing care, and I will talk all about those things next week. It pays for home health care. Sometimes it will pay for assisted living if the assisted living facility accepts it. And so that's where we get into the issues with assisted living, is that most assisted living facilities don't accept the STAR Plus waiver. And so that's why it's really important to talk to one of those senior locators who understands the assisted living communities and can help guide to ones that might accept the waiver. It's important to create a plan of eligibility before it's necessary, but get on the wait list now, because it doesn't hurt anything to get on the wait list. The wait list is about a year or so long. At last count, it can get up there. Depending on what county you're in, it could be less, right? It could be 6 to 9 months if you're in a smaller county. In Harris County, it's about a year. That grows and reduces depending on how the Texas legislature funds it, right? So these are the numbers. If you're in Houston, 713-692-1635. If you're generally in the rest of the state of Texas, 877-438-5658. You'll give name, social security, a good contact information. Give a good contact information number. Who's going to answer the phone or check the mail? Because they will, if your name comes up, they'll reach out. And if you don't respond within a certain amount of time, then you'll just be taken off the list, right? But the important thing is if your name comes up and you don't need it yet, you can say, thank you, but keep me on the list. And that way you just kind of stay on the list. And then when you do need it, then you can move forward with the application process. But this is the only way we get significant home health care through the Medicaid system. And so getting on the list now is a great idea. Okay, so the things that we're trying to avoid: running out of money, right? Leaving the home unprotected, risking the health of your family or spousal caregivers. I've already talked about the greater risk of the serious health problems for family and spousal caregivers. So considerations for aging in your home. If you want to stay in your house, things to think about. What's the condition of your home? Is it free of tripping hazards? Is it easy to navigate? Are there possible modifications that you can do? Do you need a chair lift? Do you need to extend the doors or put rails in the bathrooms, right? All of these things cost less than nursing home. It's all hard to do. And if there are some programs through the Medicaid program that might help with some home modifications as well, if you qualify. But are there possible modifications that can be done? What's the proximity to assistance, to family or community? If you have kept your house in the Heights, but all of your family has moved out to Cypress, and so they're not necessarily nearby, what does that look like? What does that mean? Do you have the assistance that you need by staying there? What's the availability of long-term care services near you? Do you have public transportation? Is there meal delivery? In some of these circumstances where we do get somebody qualified for Medicaid home health care, if they live too far out, then I can't get a provider to come out. So Medicaid's willing to pay for it, but there's no provider available to offer the services, right? So what is your proximity to services that will allow you to age in place? And is it worth thinking about maybe selling that home and purchasing a new one, or moving into a community, or doing something else? These are hard decisions. None of this is easy, but that's why you have to think ahead. And it's why it's really important to plan for what the future might hold, and at what point do some of these hard decisions need to be made. And it's best if they're made by you. It's best if they're made by the individual whose life is being affected by it. It's stressful to leave these kinds of decisions to your adult children, because they want to do what's best for you, but they also have to do what's best for them in terms of being able to care for their parents and deal with their own families and jobs, etc. And so it's important to sort of work together for all of these things. Considerations for aging in a community. Like if you are in some kind of a senior community, what is the access to social activities? What's the availability of wellness checks? Availability of transportation to doctors and stores? Like these are all questions that you ask when you go into a community. If you're thinking about moving into one, what is available for, like, what assistance do they offer with housekeeping and meal preparation? And what does that look like? All right, so let's talk a little bit about planning, right? That's all just conversations to have. Everything before now is just things that we don't want to have to think about, but we really need to if we want to have any control at all whatsoever over our aging and the dignity in our aging. So Mary's story. Mary's 78-year-old who recently lost her husband to cancer after a long battle. Family wanted to make sure she's taken care of. 2 children live in different states. Didn't worry about her living at home. So that was one of those, considerations. What is available around you? What kind of support do you have? She owns a home worth approximately $300,000, has $225 in checking, savings, CDs. And she has a Social Security income of about $2,100 a month. She has a long-term care policy that she's been paying on forever, and it provides a daily benefit of $150. Great. That is a great place to start. So when we start needing care, we know that we can first rely on that long-term care policy. Now, some of them, have daily benefit limits, some of them have time limits, some of them have amount limits, right? So your policy is going to be individual, and it's going to require you to really review it or have somebody review it and tell you what it says and make sure that you understand the terms of it and when it comes into play. So like, for example, some policies have lead times. And so you have to like private pay for assistance for like 90 days before it kicks in or whatever. Like there's these different provisions that are there. So basic plan, right? Keep the long-term care policy. If you have a long-term care policy, generally speaking, I cannot recommend ever getting rid of it, because you've already been paying into it. And if there's a benefit, then use that benefit. You're most likely going to need it. Place a portion of the liquid assets into a family trust that her kids can oversee and get the funds if needed. And so that helps for management. It also helps protect Mary from scams and financial exploitation, right? Because if Mary's living on her own and her kids are in a different state, and some supposedly well-meaning person starts helping out and doing things, and then, oh, well, I need a car. And so Mary feels compelled to like, oh, well, they've been doing so much good help for me, and so I need to buy them a car. This happens a lot. So much more often than people realize. And so especially vulnerable adults living alone, they end up in situations where they do feel compelled to give their money, because as we age, we just become like, there are just certain things that we lose the ability to make some judgment calls, to be honest. And so having those funds in a trust will at least always protect them for Mary's benefit later on. Mary's going to keep some funds for home repairs, vacations, anything she wants. Of course, it's still her money. And then create very special, superpowered powers of attorney for health and financial decisions. I talked a little bit about this last week, how important it is to have your durable power of attorney. It's the single most important document you can have while you're alive. I think I said it about 10 times last time, and I'm going to say it again because it's true. You should really have a good durable power of attorney. And of all of the sort of agency documents, your medical power of attorney, HIPAA authorization, everything I talked about, almost all of those are statutory forms, including the durable power of attorney, that you can just pull offline and then initial and sign. But you run the risk of not giving authority that you need to be giving, not giving the powers that you need to be giving. And there are some special powers that need to be placed in a durable power of attorney to allow your family to manage your assets if you need to, just for the future. There are special powers that elder law attorneys especially like to include, so that their clients can be taken care of. All right, the results. If Mary's health should fail, so Mary's independent right now, right? So she's okay. She'll have the long-term care policy. She'll have her own funds, and then her kids can access the family trust funds if necessary, right? And then after 5 years, all of the assets in the family trust fund could be protected and wouldn't be counted for Medicaid purposes. And we're going to talk a little bit about that again next week, is all about Medicaid. If Mary needs skilled nursing care, right? And then if she becomes unable to make decisions for herself, the financial and healthcare agents that she named in her powers of attorney can step in and make decisions for her, and help protect her from neglect, exploitation, etc. It is a $36 billion a year industry, the elder financial exploitation scam, 36 billion. It blows my mind how prevalent that is. So making sure you have the right people in place is so important. So if Mary and her husband had an opportunity to plan ahead, or if they'd talked to an elder law attorney as they aged, then there might have been some things that we could do prior to his death that would have helped, right? And again, this is sort of Medicaid planning, but this is sort of pre-planning. So generally, money received from a spouse is considered an asset of both spouses, unless it's received through a special kind of trust created by a will, right? So there's some estate planning that we can do that can help protect like half of a spouse's assets if the other spouse needs to go into a long-term care facility later. All right. And if you do nothing, because a lot of people do nothing because they're afraid to hear the answer. So they avoid it because it causes so much anxiety. It's so frightening to not know, but it's even more frightening to find out it's worse than you thought it was. And so a lot of people avoid these conversations. They avoid looking at their own finances. They avoid having conversations with their families. It is so much worse to avoid this conversation than it is to face it. At least if we face it, we might come up with some solutions. If we avoid it, then we lose all control. We have no way of being able to control any of it. So if she'd done nothing, then her home and all of her liquid assets could be consumed by the cost of long-term care. If she didn't have a proper financial power of attorney, thousands could be spent setting up guardianships, right? And the court would choose who would make decisions. So remember, an agent under a durable power of attorney can't necessarily veto you. So if a person is making poor choices, then an agent can't stop them, but a trustee can. Having a good power of attorney is a great start because at least we have a little bit of, we have some ways to manage things. But that's a tricky one. There would be no funds that her children could access to make sure she's getting the best care possible. And then there would be nothing left to pass to them upon her death, and her choices would be severely limited, right? So thinking about all of this ahead of time, putting things in place, figuring out what the numbers are, figuring out what your wishes are, how to make sure that your wishes, that you can pay for your wishes and what that's going to look like. All of these are critical. And to my mind, the least important thing on this is making sure that her kids have stuff after she's gone. That is not the most important thing in this planning. Making sure that you have the care that you need. That is the only thing that matters. Aging with dignity is the only thing that matters. And so if that means that you have to use your finances to do that, however that works best for you, then that is what we need to do. Leaving things to the kids is the least of our concerns. Okay, every client situation is unique, period. Everyone has a different picture of what they want their aging to look like. They have different needs, different care needs, different financial needs. They have different resources to rely on, some people have 10 kids and they're all incredibly involved in everything. Some people have 10 kids and they all live in 10 different states and none of them are Texas, right? We all have different resources to rely on. Everyone's working on a different timeline and with a different level of urgency. And there's no one size fits all long-term care planning. Whatever worked for your neighbor's great uncle may not work for you, right? I definitely hear that a lot. Oh, well, my neighbor's on Medicaid and they don't have all these qualifications. Well, there's 101 different Medicaid programs. So when you say they're on Medicaid, I don't know what that means. They have a different program. And what worked for one person is not necessarily what's going to work for you. And so it's really important to have the consultation, to go in, sit down with a certified elder law attorney and go over everything and see what it looks like and have a plan in place. Know where your triggers are. So yeah, where to start? Understand the scope of your healthcare issues for yourself, your loved one who might need benefits. Consider home healthcare for the most difficult hours of the day. If you need somebody to come in for the first 4 hours to help you get up, to help prevent a fall, okay, accepting help for 20% of the time and being independent 80% of the time keeps you from having no independence, keeps you from losing your independence 100% of the time, right? So sometimes you might need someone to come in. Consider alternatives to home ownership, right? As a caregiver, know your breaking point. Know at what point something has to change. I experienced this with my own parents. My mom's husband kept falling out of the bed. He had vascular dementia and he kept falling out of the bed. And every time she would have to call the EMTs to come and pick him up and put him back in bed because she couldn't lift him. And it just got to be so much. It got to be too much. And so she had to make a very difficult decision about placing him in a nursing facility. And the guilt that came with that was overwhelming. But she was killing herself, and she wasn't really able to care for him in the way that he needed to be cared for. And so it's a no-win situation. It's important to know your breaking point and to know what the next steps are going to look like. Know your loved one's income and assets. If they're not sharing that information with you, you need to insist, because you can't help them if they don't share that. And then contact an elder law attorney to discuss what your future is going to look like, what needs to happen. Here are some local resources that are worth reviewing or worth going to. The Area Agency on Aging, I'm a huge fan. Contact them. There might be some programs that are local or countywide that might be available to a loved one who needs a little bit of assistance, but not full-blown nursing facilities. So that's Area Agency on Aging is great. The STAR+ waiver interest list, again, I highly recommend it. And then longtermcare.gov has some more information just generally about long-term care. All right, so we have a couple of questions. So somebody wants to know if you can get, if the STAR+ waiver is available for people who get Section 8 housing. I don't believe that those things are mutually exclusive. If you qualify for Medicaid on the waiver, then I don't think that the Section 8 housing is going to affect that, but I would just need to, yeah, I don't think they have anything to do with each other, honestly. I am not a member of any legal plans. So if you're through work or whatever, if you have access to an attorney, an estate planning attorney to do a general will, I am not a member of any of those plans. I will say most of those attorneys are not going to be elder law attorneys. And so if you are looking for specific elder law provisions to go into your will, I highly recommend contacting an elder law attorney. If you have one on your plan, great, but that's not necessary. That's, you know, they may or may not be able to help with that aspect of it. If you're not eligible for long-term care insurance because of a pre-existing condition, are there any other resources for long-term care? So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of long-term care out now. It's not just the use it or lose it car insurance type ones where you pay in and then you hope to get paid out, right? There's all kinds of other ones that you can do that are like annuities whole life with different riders. And so it's worth talking to a professional. I don't know the ins and outs of long-term care insurance in terms of pre-existing conditions, so I couldn't really speak to that, but I can say, if you have questions about that, talk to a professional. Talk to somebody who's very well-versed in long-term care industry, and they can kind of help guide you. So there's a question here that says, Medicare is not considered. I don't understand what that question is, other than to say that Medicare doesn't cover long-term care. Medicare is like health insurance, like Blue Cross Blue Shield. It covers your doctors and hospital stays. It covers some rehabilitation for a certain amount of days. Again, we will go over the difference between Medicare and Medicaid next week, and kind of talk about what Medicare covers versus what Medicaid covers. But in general, when it comes to long-term care, Medicare has nothing to do with it. Is there any particular age for the wait list? Well, it's for the elderly and people with disabilities program. So it's Medicaid for the elderly and people with disabilities program. So generally, when you're talking about getting on the wait list for the STAR+ waiver, you know, I don't think that there is a specific age limit. Call, give them your birth date, see if they do it. It doesn't cost anything. Do I have any suggestions how to look for insurance companies that offer good Medicare supplements? Again, there are professionals out there that will walk you through all the different kinds of supplements. Find somebody who is a professional in that arena. I work with a group called the Senior Estate Concierge in Houston, and it's a whole bunch of senior professionals that do all of these kinds of different things. You can go to their website. It's just called Senior Estate Concierge. And then you can look up different people who have Medicare, who do Medicare supplement kinds of things, and they might be able to assist. What's the difference between skilled care and care in a nursing home? None. It's the same thing. A skilled care facility and a nursing home are generally skilled nursing homes. They're the same thing. You're generally looking at so skilled care, the definition of skilled care means that you have to have somebody who is medically trained in a specific area to assist, right? So skilled care is not companion care. So like home health care, when you have say companion care, it's just someone to come and sit with you and make sure that, you get help getting up and down, and it's custodial. It's custodial care. Skilled care is someone who needs to come in and assist with wound management and sort of more nursing kinds of things. My grandmother moved to an assisted living facility in Kentucky about a year ago. Next week, she's moving to Texas into a facility in my neighborhood. She refuses to discuss her financial situation. How do you go about insisting she do so? She'll be 90 next month and is fiercely independent. If she won't talk to you, see if she'll talk to a professional, right? It is so important. There's a couple of different ways that we can approach it, but really the fact is that if she falls and ends up in the hospital and then in rehabilitation for 6 months or 6 weeks, who's going to pay her bills, right? I understand that she's fiercely independent and you don't have to take over right now, but it's important to have that conversation. Who's going to pay her bills? Who's going to make sure that decisions are made, that there's somebody in charge? And so you can't force people to talk to you, but you can make the conversation constant. You can harass them because it's that important. It is important enough to cause them to be frustrated with you by insisting that they had these conversations with you. At the very least, know where their bank accounts are. If you have a durable power of attorney and they're like, well, yes, I'll sign this, but I'm not going to tell you anything. That is not helpful either, because then you still don't know how to access anything. Be a pest. That is my best advice. Be a pest until they answer or help.
Can I also chime in?
Yes.
So from a social work perspective, when I'm talking to families about their loved ones being resistant to whatever, moving out of their home, I always say, this is just a way that I can honor your wish. And so this is you allowing me you're putting things in place before so that I can honor your wishes, not my wishes, your wishes. And so usually people okay, this is just so you can do what I want you to do. And you're making the provisions ahead of time so that we're not having to scramble to honor your wishes. So you kind of put it on them that this is all about you. This is just so I can get your job done, that I can do what it is that you want me to do for you. Usually people are a little bit more agreeable.
Agreed. Yes, yeah. Agreed. Bring it all back to the fact this is if they don't tell you where things are, then they lose the ability to make decisions about it later on. If they want to make the choices, they have to tell you what those choices are. They have to tell you what the decisions are, and they got to tell you now and how to go through with it. Can you place a parent on the STAR+ waiver interest list without their knowledge if your parent refuses to do any planning for themselves? You know what? You can call up the STAR+ waiver interest list, give a name, social security number, good contact information, and they will be placed on the list. Now, when it comes to qualifying, when their name comes up and it comes to qualifying and taking care of stuff, then things have to be in place. But, you know, having somebody on the list is not necessarily, it's just a wait list, right? So maybe the answer is to have her confide in an elder law attorney instead. That also works. Just use whatever professional it takes. Somebody's commenting on the knowing your breaking point as a caregiver is absolutely crucial. Like knowing when and recognizing that, like, go do the caregiver programs at Care Partners, right? Go be part of these social groups that are all going through the same things that you are. The guilt is real. The stress is real. This is like, it cannot be understated. But the fact is that we cannot forget the caregivers in these circumstances. Yes, the principal needs care. Yes, they need help. The caregiver cannot do everything on their own. And so, and it's important to understand that, and it's important to forgive yourself for not being perfect. And it's important to forgive yourself for not being able to do everything, and find your social group, find your group of people, find solace in making some of these decisions, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you cannot take care of your loved one. That's just the way it is. So that is, do I work with folks in the DFW area? I can work with anybody around Texas. Generally, depending on how complex it is, I might refer you out. There are excellent elder law attorneys in Texas. We have an incredibly active group called Texas NALA. It's the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And anybody in that group is going to be able to help you. And so I'm happy to talk to you. But if it's something that you might need someone a little bit more local for, I'm also happy to make referrals. All right. That's it. That's it for the questions that we have today. Thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate it. Next week, like I said, is all about Medicaid qualification, the differences between Medicaid and Medicare, and what we're looking for. Like, how do we move through this system? Because it is not easy. It is incredibly complex. And so if the only thing you get out of it next week is that this is incredibly complex, then you'll have done it. Because I can't answer all your questions about Medicaid. All I can do is show you that it's not as easy as it seems. But the more important thing is that the internet is not your friend.
Oh my.
Thank you, Angela.
Okay.
So for those of you that did not get the presentation, I'm going to put my email in the chat. Email me. We will send it out via our constant contact email messaging system. However, I can email you directly if there's some issue with you getting the email, because we have over 700 people registered. So if your name somehow is not on that list, then you won't get the email. So I'm going to put my email in the chat, and you can email me directly and I will send it to you individually.
Okay.
But thank you so much, Angela.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Okay. And just one last bit of information, and to go along with our subject matter with Angela today, AARP has a guide. Well, as you can see, it's in Spanish. I don't have my English version, but it's called Home Fit, and it's used to give you information, give you pictures. It's a guide. It's a guide on some modifications and things that can be done in your home to help you age in place. Some things you can do. Some things you might need a professional to do. Some things you might just be able to barter with someone to do. Well, if you come and do this, and I'll bake you a cake, I'll cook a meal, so and just little small things, little small tidbits. And this brochure, as you can see, it comes in English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Korean. And there are also videos that show room by room what you can do. If you just go to the aarp.org /homefit or aarp.org/livable, you can order this brochure, or you can download it from the internet, the brochure, as well as other information pertaining to living in aging in place. And again, I want to thank you. And if you are interested in learning more about becoming a volunteer or learning more about AARP, the organization, you can just go to aarp.org/nearyou, and we can be found on any platform. And so I look forward to seeing you. And then another plug, and I'll be done. If you're part of an organization and you'd like AARP to come out and present information to you that pertains to the 50+ community, then you can also do that by reaching out to aarp.org/nearyou. And we'll be happy to come out and give a presentation on home fit or decluttering, so that you can make your home safer and preparing to care that goes, and all of these things go along with the message, or the messages, that Angela has brought to us, and that Ariel, it's part of her realm. So again, thank you so very much. And thank you, Ariel, for partnering with us and allowing AARP to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Hopefully you all got some great information. I know I learned a lot. And so we will be sending out that information to you within the next few days. So y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.